A person's success in life is often measured by their willingness and ability to have difficult conversations. And that's from Tim Ferriss. It's what I always think about when I think about how I want to move through life. And as it relates to today's topic of communication, having difficult conversations, I think it's the foundation of the human experience. And that quote just sums it up. So I'm excited to talk about this with you and bring it to the people.
Yeah, I completely agree, man. This quote I heard a while ago as well, and it's definitely rooted in success in life, in better relationships, in anything that we do well, because everything is in relating and in communication. So I think we can speak volumes to this. And I think also for both of us, we have this overlap where we both read this book, The Courage to Be Disliked. And I think that was also a theme in it, which is being able to have uncomfortable conversations, being able to be disliked if that comes up. Because I know both you and I like to be liked, like many people, but to be able to have the courage to lean into hard conversations and have the courage to be like, oh, I'm going to say this and it's rooted in truth. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I'm going to communicate it as honestly as I can. And I think that is so important, especially for me lately. The North Star for me has been truth. And as often as possible that I can speak from truth and bring forward truth, just feels so much better to be honest in communication. So yeah, let's dive into that.
Yeah. And, this goes without saying kind of, but we're not taught these things. And that's why I remember my first exposure to it was through the relationship advice podcast that I had, where I would interview therapists. I wasn't giving the advice. And I got all these frameworks to use in communication. And it's super valuable. And I go back to them because they're effective and they've been studied and there's a reason. And we're going to talk about them today. And I think a good place to start is setting the container for a conversation, right? In preparation for this episode, we were talking about this and what that looks like. And it's a few different things, but just physically not having certainly difficult conversations or anything on close to that spectrum late at night when you're tired, when you're hungry, when you're stressed out. If you can just do that, and have that in mind and table those difficult conversations for when you're in a calm, well-fed, well-rested space, like your communication is going to be 50% better.
So what if you're fasting? Just don't have hard conversations?
In the morning, you clear-headed.
I know, I'm kidding. Because you're hungry technically the whole time in the fast. So don't have any conversations that are hard in the fast. But it's true. It's like the Snickers commercial. You're not you when you're hungry.
Yes.
So, and I mean, it makes sense. And I miss the mark on that often. I don't think about it. And I have this version of myself that I call Morning Ryan. I'm not a morning person. So this will apply to those people that are not morning people. When I'm early in the morning, things will come to mind that I'm uncomfortable with, or, oh, I should say this thing, or whatever negative self-talk usually happens for me in that morning, like first hour. And so I notice and I call it Morning Ryan so I can identify, oh, like this is Morning Ryan. This isn't me. This is just the version of me that's a little bit groggy, hasn't fully woken up, that hasn't done his practices. And this version of me is definitely not ready for conversations that involve conflict, or ready to even communicate these things, which is another reason I don't get on my phone first thing in the morning, because that's just going to farther kind of feed the flame of discomfort in myself. And it's not a good time for me to communicate. But that's my like Morning Ryan is not the time. Do you have a time for you that really is like, or maybe it's a time of day or a certain, like in the surf or
certain environment?
Yeah. I'm curious for you.
Not in particular. I would say related to that though, I have this, I'm going to call it extreme anxiety, but like if something comes to mind, particularly in a romantic relationship, I often want to share it in that moment.
Yeah.
And this is related to, we talked about the container, but it's related to a container is that maybe it's not the right moment to, your partner says this thing that's been triggering you, they've been saying, and yet table it, and different advice that I've heard as far as in a romantic partnership of, pick a one day a week or one day a month. I think weekly is good to have a check-in. And that's when those triggers, those kind of harder conversations, and then you could set that up for you 9 a.m. You're both well fed. You both know the parameters, like that you're good. And then maybe your partner had a hard day at work and they're like, hey, let's table that, because that's something you can control and set yourself up for success by having the right environment.
Yeah, it's actually a great reminder. I used to do that with my partner on Sundays because I prep my week on Sundays and Sunday evenings. Like just after we had dinner, we're feeling like super calm, connected. We have the evenings open, and I would look at the week. She would look at hers. Like, what are you most grateful for? What are you looking forward to this week? And really give a container to reflect on the past week. Like, oh, what happened? I would use the framework of win, challenge, insight, which is what was a win, either relationally or personally, a challenge we faced and an insight we gained. But honestly, that's kind of dropped off. So this is a good reminder even for me to hear this, because it's hard to do it every week because life happens. But those frameworks, to really stick to them, I have it in the calendar as a reminder. And actually, it's good for me to invite her to those events for me because I operate off my calendar. It's good to have that, but it's so important to do that because things will just go left unsaid. And I'm using the Daily Stoic Journal. This is a journal that has little prompts every day. And it asked me, I think it's like 4 days ago, it said, what small stuff should you sweat? Because, it's like, don't sweat the small stuff. It's fine. Like, keep flowing, keep going. But I was thinking about that, and I actually brought it up to my partner in the evening after the day, because it checks in the morning, you check in at night, and we talked about it. I was like, oh yeah, what small stuff should I sweat? And we both talked about it. And I was like, yeah, little bits of conflict, little micro resentments that can come up. And we started talking about micro resentments that we have with each other. And I mean, even that prompt and that question was so potent for us, because it's like, oh, whatever, like, we don't need to talk about that. But that we don't need to talk about that small stuff just accumulates over time. And you were in partnership for a lot longer than I was. Your marriage was 12 years. So, I mean, that's a whole other game where it starts to accumulate slowly. If you don't have a framework or a regular check-in, it's going to just get to the point where you just burst. And you're like, oh, you don't take out the trash, and all this stuff comes out. It's like, whoa, I had no idea, because we didn't check in, because we didn't have that framework or that time to talk about the small things before they become massive bits of conflict. Yeah.
And it's going to build more connection. And it's not always, for sure, share the triggers and the micro things. And it's nice to just be a mirror to your partner, listen to them of their challenge, whatever, and to complement each other, and we don't always communicate that, again, especially in any long-term relationship, friendship, romantic partnership, family, of like, it doesn't have to be around conflict. Generally, those are more difficult, but like building that bank of positivity up. So when you do have the difficult conversations, those aren't the only ones you're having, right? You're having conversations like, hey, when you ask me about my day, that really feels good. That's a communication that we don't really think to do, but it's positive reinforcement of, to our partner, to say like, hey, when you do that, that feels good. And it's just like any muscle, like the more you use it, the easier it gets. But I love these frameworks for that.
I think about that in friendship too, and how even us as friends, how we could implement that and how that could take place. Because naturally, I think Monday nights is like our dinner night where we get like one-on-one time. My partner's at a women's circle, so that just tends to occur. Yeah. We see each other every day. We talk multiple times a day. But I don't think we've actually done like, hey, let's drop in, let's have this time where it's actually, a space that is focused on our friendship. I don't think we've really done that. So that could be cool even for us to implement as friends, which can feel a little bit more uncomfortable, I notice, because we're two guys and we're like, oh, things are probably chill until something comes up. But I think that would actually be nice for us to even implement as friends.
Yeah, let's put it on the calendar. I like it.
I'll send you a calendar invite. Seriously, though, I think as men too, just the way we communicate emotions. And I mean, conflict maybe can be communicated, but often it's with anger. It's not with balance. It's not with ease. It usually is like, once I get really pissed off, I'll say it. But to actually be able to have that capacity, that emotional awareness of like, oh, that little thing is happening, or a regular container, like you're saying. Yeah. So even for friends, I think that's a good thing to have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this is a good segue to talk about the framework for having the conversation. Yeah. So we're setting the container. There's a lot to be said on that. And we have a good framework and base. And then we're going to go into the conversation. And you read the book, right? The Nonviolent Communication.
I didn't read the book, actually. I just did the training online, which probably has, the same kind of input as it. But there's the free resource on YouTube that's like an 1.5 hour long training by Marshall Rosenberg. Did you have him on the podcast ever?
No, I was in communication with him, but I did read the book.
Gotcha.
And and we thought that would be a great tool to share because it's kind of like this foundational framework to have conversations. They don't even have to be difficult. And it starts by what was the
observation?
Observation. Yeah,
that was the one that we both missed. That's the first one. And I like this. I like observation because it's how objective can I be in this scenario? Like, can I step back for a second and just be as objective? I mean, it's hard to be completely objective, but to observe without the emotion, because usually we'll start to feel something coming up. In nonviolent communication is how do we start to communicate without the reactivity? How do we start communicating with responsiveness? So first, to observe and be aware of, okay, this isn't objectively a bad thing. This isn't wrong, because it often isn't. It's just, oh, this is just something that's occurring. So first, can we step out of ourselves and observe?
And that related to that is sometimes, like I said, like tabling the conversation. You can literally put an asterisk on it, be like, okay, I'm going to give myself space too, to like not react in anger. And it's a hard thing to do. But then it could even be like, hey, I'm feeling like really triggered by the situation. I just need a little bit of time. Can we have this discussion in an hour?
Yeah. Which you just named the second one, which is feeling.
Yes.
Which is, even if you're not going to have a conversation right then, to acknowledge how you're feeling, which you just did. You said, I. It's an I statement. It's not, you are doing this. It's, when you do that, this blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. It's like, I'm feeling this right now. This is what's coming up for me. It doesn't have to be, this thing that you did makes me feel this. You can just be in the I statement. And this is where having the emotional capacity, especially as men, I notice how much my partner feels acknowledged and appreciates when I can name something beyond, I'm mad, or I don't like that. This very basic kind of conveying of communication. You can bring it to a bodily level, right? You can say that I feel some tension in my body right now. Can we talk about this later? Or if you have the space right then, you could also go into it. Like, this is making me feel a bit sad, actually. And then we can go into the next steps. But naming the feeling, I feel this, so valuable.
Yeah. And no one makes us feel anything. And that's a bigger thing when you can start to internalize that and point the finger back at yourself. But I statements is really huge, and related to that is really trying not to say never, should, always, you always do this. Again, don't say you or even to yourself, because self-talk is important. Like, oh, I always get mad when this happens. But these kind of finite statements, should, never, always, put you in a box. And certainly if you're saying that to someone else, they're not going to land well or be productive for good conversations.
Yeah. The next part is need. So this would be kind of like, we're having the conversation, we've created the space, and then we can get into after you shared the feeling, after you've talked about the scenario of what occurred, ideally we're feeling more centered, more calm in ourselves. Then we can name the need, right? What is the need? Can you give an example of like how that could look?
Yeah, and the need, the way I think of it too is what I need, or like a request.
Yeah.
And what's really important is your partner or your friend or whoever you're communicating to is by no means obligated to fulfill this need.
Yes.
That's important, because that was a part where it's like, I need this. I did it right.
Yeah.
So now it's like, okay, hopefully they can meet you there, maybe, but it's also okay, because they might be like, I feel, I'm feeling this way, and I need a little space to calm down, and then I can give you what you need.
Yeah.
So
that's one I've done before, where I was feeling a lot of how I communicated it was, and just give a scenario, because it's good to actually share the experiences, not just the breakdown of the format. But I was feeling triggered by something. I felt like something was being brought up, and like, oh, that's not what I did. This is my internal dialogue. My partner was bringing something up like, this is, you do this and this happened and blah, blah, blah. And I felt very different than that. So I was like, let me think about Marshall Rosenberg. Like, what would he say? How can I nonviolently communicate this? And to her, I was like, okay, I'm feeling a lot of tension. I'm starting to feel like a little resentment, and I'm feeling some anger for sure. There's some anger. Like I could start to feel my body like get hot. There was a little bit of like trembling of like, I'm going to say something I don't want to say. So my need right now is actually to step into the other room, which the last two parts are need and request. So they kind of blend. But I was like, I need to express this, not at you, but I need to express this. And I don't want it to be directed at you, because what you're saying is not incorrect. This actually happened. I was like, I'm going to step into the other room. I'm going to do a little anger practice on the bed. I actually said, you're more than welcome to join me if you want, if you're also feeling anger. She was. And we did it together, which is also really cool. I was like, all right, I'm going to step into the other room. I'm feeling angry. If you want to join me, you can. If you want to stay here, you can. I'm not avoiding you, but I need to express this. She joined me. We started smashing pillows, screaming, like doing all the things. And at one point we started laughing, because we're like, this is wild that we're doing this together. And that was actually a part of the healing, was that we both got to express anger with each other, not at each other. I wasn't yelling at her. I wasn't, smashing pillows, being like, you, blah, blah, blah. It was just, let me feel anger. It's not about her. It's about this feeling. It's about this expression. And we did it together. And man, that was so healing. That was really amazing to do together, about our conflict, but realizing our conflict is here, but it's us. And then there's a conflict. Like, we're working together. We're on the same team here. We're not working against each other, which was cool to actually do somatically. So that was the need and request kind of blended in, and then we did it. And then we came back to feeling, then we came back to, okay, I was feeling this. And to be able to talk about it just outside of the feeling is also so powerful, because it's like, wow, look at all that anger that I felt. That's what was coming up for me, because this, what I needed was this, and my request moving forward is this. So that was a way that it came through, and we got to do it together.
That's such a beautiful practice to be able to do that. And it makes me think of the value in pausing, in a sense. Like, you were actively expressing your anger through somatic, but there was a pause to the dialogue verbally, right? And that is so key, because we don't have to dive into it and solve it all then. And you said a couple things. Remembering we're on the same team is super valuable perspective. We're not going into a conversation really ever with whoever to win it. That's not what we want. What we really want is we want understanding. We want to feel understood, and we want our partner to understand us. That should be the goal, through the lens of that we're on the same team.
Yeah, you just said it. And that's this quote of seeking first to understand, then to be understood, has been so powerful for me in relationship, any relationship, with my family, with my partner, with friends. It's like, can I just hold back the thing that I want to share for a moment, set it aside, and actually seek to understand? Not just like, okay, I'm going to wait my turn, and then I have all this to say. But instead, can I actually be curious? I notice when I do that, my body calms down, because I just set aside for a moment the thing that I'm thinking of, that I'm like, oh, I can't wait to share this. It's going to be so spot on. I'm going to win this thing. I can set that aside for a moment and be like, okay, but what are they saying? What are they actually expressing? Can I do that? Obviously, I don't always do that. But when I do, I notice how much calmer I get, because this is somebody I care about, obviously, or I wouldn't be triggered if I didn't care about this person. So that's always a good perspective for me to have too. It's like, I wouldn't be triggered by you unless I cared enough about you or the situation to be triggered. So I could be in that and like, okay, I actually love this person. That's why I'm here having this conversation. Cool. Let me see what they need. Explore that and then communicate my needs. And it's just so much better. And that place, it actually comes from honesty, comes from a much calmer place of communicating rather than the blame game, because that'll go on forever. But you do this, but you do that. And then I was like, where are we going? What are we doing?
We're not on the same team.
No.
We're trying to beat the opponent, right? Yeah, and you said curiosity, like that mindset going in, because defensiveness is going to kill a productive conversation. Your partner, friend, share something. Our, I think, natural ego wants to defend ourselves instead of going, validating their feelings. We'll talk about listening in a second, validating their feelings and then coming with curiosity. Like, wow, like I didn't know that when I do that, that really hurts you. And I'm curious, like, where do you think that comes from? I feel terrible and we're on the same team. So let's figure this out.
Yeah.
But it's just a switch as opposed to listening to respond. When someone's talking, you're just thinking, you're not listening because you're thinking about how you're going to respond. And it's a whole skill. And I want to mention something because we were talking about somatic practices and going into a conversation, but connecting physically with a hug even, right? Especially before a difficult conversation. It could be with romantic partner, friend, family member, be like, hey, you set the framework, space, time, you're well fed, well rested, and then say, hey, can we have a hug, I think that's good, or whatever kind of somatically to connect is really, and breathe. You can hug and breathe together, or you can sit next to each other and take 3 deep breaths together. But that is also really valuable.
That's one of the pieces of bread in the shit sandwich, right?
Yeah.
Without context to that, but that's that first layer of first and foremost, and it can be physical, like you're saying, somatic, or it can be verbal of, hey, just so you know, I really appreciate you as a friend or as a partner or as a parent, whatever it is. Like, I want to acknowledge that. Like, I care about you, and that's why I want to have this hard conversation. So it could also be the verbal cue, right, of something that is positive or moving towards love, whether it's physical, verbal, or otherwise, that like, hey, I appreciate you, just so you know. That's why I'm bringing this forward. That's why I feel like I have to share this. And then going into the shit, going into the hard thing, the difficult thing, the thing that might trigger and bring stuff up. And then, of course, on the other side, bringing it back to, as a closure, I would say the same thing. If you're going to come to a close together, even if it's not fully cleared and we did all the things, we talked about it all, even if not, be like, hey, just so you know, I love you. I care about you. We have more work to do here. We have more things to talk about. Or you completely cleared it up. But either way, I think there should be that closure at the end that lets the person know verbally or physically, it's like, hey, you're a person I want to continue to journey through this life with, or you're somebody I care about. And I just want you to know that. That's why I brought this up today. Said that you called it a shit sandwich.
That's a shit sandwich.
I actually didn't know it as that name, but I like that.
The compliment sandwich is another one that you give someone a compliment and then, but I had a guest call it the shit sandwich. It's more memorable.
Yeah.
And
sense.
Yeah. And there was something that you mentioned that I wanted to go back to. I'm blanking on it right now.
Okay.
We wanted to talk about listening, setting the framework. We'll go on to listening.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think, I mean, even before that, just to make sure that the NVC stuff, it's all going to be kind of nonviolent communication, but this is something I actually made sure that my partner listened to early on before we actually started dating. I sent her the YouTube video to watch. And then she was actually like, can we watch it together? Definitely. Let's watch it together. And it's something that anytime I go into partnership, I invite it in and we watch it. You know, we could read it. I guess there's a book that's also more extensive, but that would take a bit longer. It's like an hour-long commitment to watch it, and it's worth it. So if you take anything from this, we'll put the link in the description to watch that, because I noticed once we did that, we can actually reference that thing, or watch this podcast episode, you know. But that leads into the listening, right? Because it does give space. Once you have the tools, ideally both people are aware of the tools. If not, you do need a capacity to listen if they don't already know that these tools exist, or they haven't been trained up in social and emotional skills, like 98% of the population. So yeah, having the ability to listen and see, you know, what is really needed, what is really desired here in this conversation. Yeah.
Not listening to respond is such a huge part of it, because then you can't really listen, because your internal dialogue is like, oh, they said that, and you start to form your response, and you're not hearing anything.
Yeah.
I would also say getting your phones out of the room is another huge part of, because really a big part of listening is presence. So with the container being set, you know, you're not tired, hungry, you're not stressed, bringing yourself into the present moment so you can listen. Phones are out of the room, ideally. And related to listening is validation too, right? Like we can't, for not listening and taking in what the person is saying, and mirroring would be kind of along that. Be like, I share something like, hey, I really was frustrated with the way this thing went down. And then you could respond like, well, I hear you're really frustrated.
Yeah.
Like it's simple, but it's so, because now you have a better understanding, like you're reinforcing it for yourself. And now I feel more understood because you just said it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What I'm hearing is so valuable. What I'm hearing you say is you're frustrated. Okay. So let's go into that. You know, like I want to know more about this, and please share more about what's coming up for you around this. Like that invitation for people, even though I know this and I'll hear friends say it that have done this before, a part of me is like, oh, you're just doing the thing. But I'm like, oh, you actually care enough to do the thing. You care enough to regurgitate what I'm hearing is, and it feels good. It feels really good, even though it's a statement that, you know, can be used quite a bit in the conversation space. It is nice. It's nice that somebody can reflect a thing back. But even to what you said about the phone, I think as much as we can gamify this is good, because I like to do this. I like to see how good of a communicator can I be and really train my communication capacity. So at dinner, we'll do this as well. Like our phones aren't on the table. We're not having a hard conversation. We're just being in space with each other. And yet I'll either flip my phone or put it away completely, because I'm like, these little things matter. They matter in any relationship. So if you want to kind of level up your capacity in communication, these little cues of facing the person, we can only do it so much right now on the podcast. Face me. But having the phone away, actually listening to the person, actually making eye contact, actually taking what they're saying and going with that versus bringing your own thing, and nobody's actually communicating and having a conversation. It's just a monologue and another monologue. But being able to do that and gamify it and be like, cool, how much can I really listen? How deep can I really acknowledge this person? Like, even though I know I have a lot I want to say, I'll get time to say the things, but how much can I help this person be heard right now? For me, it's how much can I love the person that's sitting in front of me? If they're a stranger, if it's my parent, like if I'm on the phone with my dad, like, all right, I know he's going to say things that are going to trigger me. It comes up, but how much can I really love this man and drop the stories, which I think is a big thing as well. Dropping those stories that we have about people so we can really be present with who they are now in this moment.
Related to stories, I think we skipped over it, but we were talking about when we share our feelings, another valuable prompt is to say, the story I'm telling myself is this. and I think it's valuable for the person receiving it and for ourselves that we can understand that we're just story-making machines, and often we're making assumptions, and it's just based on our life experience and our attachment style and all the things. But if we can, even for ourselves, go, oh, the story I'm telling myself is that Ryan doesn't care because he showed up late, and it's like, that's my story.
Yeah.
And it's valuable for me, and it's valuable if I need to share something about that, for that example, to you. You understand it's not an accusation too. That kind of communication, instead of me saying you're always late, it's like, that's an accusation. The story I'm telling myself is you're sometimes late and you don't care. Mm-hmm. It's a big difference between you're always late and XYZ.
Yeah, man, it's just happened the other day. I was doing this. The story I'm telling myself is with a friend who said they were going to let me borrow their car for something. Last minute, they're like, oh, can't because of XYZ. It's like, okay, I could just let that go because it's a little thing and I can pivot. But I was like, let me communicate to them. I care about this person. He's a brother, somebody I want to communicate with, and I think would want this feedback. So I communicated that. Like, hey man, the story I'm telling myself is that you're putting other people's needs in front of mine, and it doesn't feel good. It makes it hard for me to trust your word. And I really want to trust your word because I care about you. And I know you want to be a man of integrity. And I feel like you are, but this story is coming up for me, and it has a few times. So I just want to check in. I want to see, like, how real is this story? Is this just me in my own world? Let me know. And his response was amazing. He was like, whoa, I had no idea that was coming up. And I want to be in more integrity. I'm sorry that this looked this way. And I completely hear what you're saying. He ended up having a lot of capacity to talk about it. But the story I'm telling myself is very potent. I can think of many scenarios where just saying that versus you always do this, or when you do this, blah, 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 blah. But the story I'm telling myself is a very potent practice. So try this one out as much as you can. I still need to implement it more, but it's really, really valuable. And it gives the person the space to actually, show up and be like, oh, okay, you're saying this is your thing. Great. Okay. I notice I am doing that. Or they don't feel attacked, because it's not attacking the person. It's just acknowledging what's happening for you in your world. Man, it's a good one.
Yeah. And even individually, like, you definitely communicate it if it needs to be, but just for our internal dialogue, because we're just making meaning out of all these things and assuming, and hopefully we're creating practices to not do that as much. But if we go, the story I'm telling myself is this, and understanding that often reality is much different. And we're just going to move through the world. Like, we all have that friend or maybe someone in our life, or that the world's against them, and they got a really negative story they're telling themselves. And I'm not denying people don't have it hard and bad luck and this and that, but there's sometimes you see, like, people can get in a framework where the story is just this dark one and the world is out to get you. And it's like, that's tough. Why not flip the script and be like, what if the universe wants good for me? And that's the story I'm going to tell myself. And this is kind of, that's our internal communication. But as we receive that too, it's going to make the person that receives it way more open, not be defensive, as opposed to an accusation.
Yeah. that's also another part of that is when, if we're communicating either internally or to another person, instead of saying you always, or every time you know, these kind of infinite statements, these definitive statements, every time, always. The cool thing about the story I'm telling myself is that it doesn't say that this is always. It doesn't make it definitive. It leaves space. And as much as possible that we can remove that, which is also a nonviolent communication skill, is not making anything definitive. It's not, you are this. It's always that.
Mm-hmm.
We can drop that and just be more specific. Today, when I did this, this is what happened. Noticing the specificity in it is so helpful, and it can actually release a lot of conflict. It's like, oh, you're telling me a very specific scenario. Cool, let's go into that. What was coming up for me today? Why did that occur? Not every time I come home, the dishes are dirty. Could be, I noticed the past 2 days when I came home, the dishes were dirty. And for me, that brings up, you know, I don't feel valued for all the work I do, blah, 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 blah. Like that was something that occurred for me recently. And just taking things as they really are and not saying you always, because nobody always does anything. That just doesn't happen. Nothing is that definitive. So it's nice to also release those kind of statements about people, because then their character comes into play. And you're like, oh, I don't want to challenge your character. I just want to say these things that are occurring, even if regular, are triggering for me, or I would love to see improve if that's something you're also interested in. So yeah, like taking away that definitive statement, mm-hmm. and then just saying the story I'm noticing is.
Yeah, and there's so many things to touch on. One of the things that came up with the communication is to be clear through these tools and ask for what you want.
Yeah.
Right? Like, don't assume that your partner or friend is going to like know how you like to be loved or how you want to be received in a certain situation. And I think that's a big thing that can make a big difference. And it's not taught, and it's not easy sometimes. Sometimes people will be like, well, they should know that I want this, right? And it's all related to communication, really. There's deeper things too, of like just getting the courage or building that muscle to ask directly for what you want and not go, well, they should know to do this.
Yeah. Do you have an example of that?
Yeah. It's funny you ask, because I literally had the specific example of a former girlfriend, and it was a great relationship. I'm not saying like, but there was a situation. Nice. I just said, I wanted to say, but that's also another important thing of like when we're communicating. And there was a situation where I had to drive home. It was a long distance relationship, and she was working in very stressed. And I'm like, hey, I'm going to go. I'll see you, in a week. And her clients had arrived, but I could tell something was off because she was dealing with some things. My intuition, I read her language and energy, and I was like, hey, are you sure? Like I can stay. And she's like, no, go. And I'm like, I'll stay. No, go. And I'm like, I'm going to stay. I'll see you in a couple hours. I'm going to go have breakfast somewhere else. And so I came back, and she was really working through some negative emotions with some things. And I'm glad that I stayed to support her. So there was that. And then I asked again, like, okay, now I'm going to go. Like, are you? And she's like, yeah. And I was like, okay. Later that evening, I come to find out, like, she was not happy that I left. Like, and we worked through it, but that was a situation where I was just like, at a certain point, I got to take you for your word or what you are communicating to me. And everyone has their upbringing and the different things that make it hard to, but and her expectation was like, well, you knew the situation, you should have read between the lines and just say it. And it's like, at a certain point, I did kind of intuit, and then I was like, you're telling me to go, so it's a subtle thing, but I think that happens often. And especially in romantic partnerships, they cut to our triggers and our wounds the deepest. And when someone doesn't meet our expectation or what we think they should do, that can really hurt. And if it's not overtly communicated, our partners can't read our minds, right?
Yeah. Good job bringing the "and" in there.
Yeah.
That was good. Yeah, that really matters, especially for the people that can be avoidant.
Yes.
In conflict, which our partners can be. And that is something that comes up, right? It's something that I've navigated with my partner. If she is, and her tendency was to be more avoidant. So like, whatever, it's all good, would kind of be, not those exact words, but that would come up more than not. And I'm the opposite. I'm like, I want to go into the thing, like, let's talk about it. And as much as possible, we can't control that if they want to take space from it. But as much as possible, we can really ask for what they need. And that's happened with my partner and I have not the same scenario, but something similar where it's like, you sure you don't want support right now? She's like, no, fine, very short. And I'm like, okay, you seem like you need some type of support. Let me know what your needs are so I can either show up for them or give you space. And I bluntly said, do you want me to show up for you right now, or do you want space right now? Which is more supportive? It's like, actually, you showing up for me. I'm like, great. What does that look like? What's the best way I can show up for you right now? She's like, I think you just being in the room is all I want. I don't want you to solve anything or go into it with me. Like, I don't actually want to share the thing. I just want you here. It's like, beautiful. I'll be here. And even just that one thing of, is space more helpful or is me being here more helpful? That layer. And then she got to be, oh, okay, cool. I can just choose. Great. One or the other. And it just feels nice as well for me to communicate that, but also for her to receive that. And I know for us that has healed so many things for both of us. Because if she said, I just need space, I'm like, okay, you just need space. And I don't take it personally. It's like, you want space. That's for you. It's not about me. That's for you. Or if she is like, I really actually want you to be here, but I want it to look like this, it allows the avoidant to kind of fall away. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm safe. Because it usually is in like a lack of safety. I don't feel safe enough to say this because of my upbringing or because of whatever story. So let me just avoid it altogether. That's easier. But if we can help the people we care about feel safe enough to choose, that's amazing.
Yeah. And we touched on attachment styles, but that's a whole other episode. But I encourage our listeners, if you don't already know, dive into that. It's a basic outline, but to understand your attachment style, so valuable for relating and for communicating, like what we're talking about, because the other side is like an anxious attachment style. And this is related to the timing of a conversation, where an avoidant might be like, I don't want to talk about it right now. And this is the anxious avoidant dynamic, where the anxious will be like, no, but like, we need to talk about it like now. And so that recognition of your own attachment style in a romantic partnership or anything, but especially romantic, in your partners, so that you don't go down this negative spiral where the avoidant is kind of running away from the conversation and the anxious is chasing it. And that pause, for me, I could be on the anxious spectrum of attachment. The pause in conversation or the avoiding it would create a lot of anxiety. So what I found with that situation is, we say, all right, I can't talk about it right now. The avoidant could say this, or just the other person. And let's set a time. It could even be tomorrow, but that will put someone that might be a little bit more anxious at ease to be like, okay, there's a known time that we're going to talk about this, instead of just like, I can't do this right now, and walks out the door. Like, that'll leave someone feeling, very anxious.
Yeah, that's violent communication.
Yes.
Even if it might not look like it, that's still a pretty violent way of communicating. So it's not acknowledging the other person's space. As somebody who has in the past been more anxious, how do you give more space for somebody who could be more avoidant or somebody that just relates different than you? How have you, because I know you've had partners that have been avoidant.
Yep.
It seems like anxious attachment style people will
They attract, we attract each other. No, it's a thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious for you, how have you navigated that where you've given space for the person, but then also started to feel kind of calm in yourself and not going into the anxious spaces? I've seen you in relationship for a few years with different people and talking about past things, and it seems you're more securely attached now.
Yeah.
And I'm curious in how you navigated that from being anxious to then now feeling, more secure in yourself and communication and relationship.
Good question. Yeah. Thank you. I feel like I have healed that a lot.
Yeah.
And I would say I've just created a knowing of safety, that I am safe, like with myself, and that I'm enough, that I don't have to win this other person over or solve the problem in that moment. Like there's lots of things, breathing techniques, I would say when I was more in the anxious space, doing some conscious breath work would help. And I've just gradually gotten to a space of safety. And I'm sure people listening, if you relate to this, it could, even texting is communication. So you text someone, you text your partner, a friend, and they don't respond. And then you got this story, the story I'm telling myself is they don't care. And that's actually a valuable thing too, with that reframing internal dialogue of like, okay, I'm feeling really anxious. They haven't texted back in an hour, and they usually text right back. It's like, all right, the story I'm telling myself is they don't care, or they're with someone else, or it's like, and then ask yourself, like, is that true? And often if we're centered, it's like, no, it's not true. And what do I need? What can I give myself? Call a friend in that moment. It depends. There's lots of tools. But yeah.
Yeah. I think that check-in, because even you asking the story, it removes yourself, which is that first step in nonviolent communication. It's like, let me get a different perspective. Just for a moment takes, because anxiety is something that happens in the body. So if you can just remove for a moment, like, oh, this is a story. Okay, interesting. I can remove that. And your affirmation or statement or whatever you want to call it, I am safe, is huge. Because, all the information exists infinitely. You can look all this up on ChatGPT if you want. You can find out all the information, read all the books, and you even had a relationship podcast for 8 years. You can hear all the things, and yet the stuff still occurs. So it's really just a matter of, okay, what works for you? Test it out, try it out. Because I imagine you knew attachment styles for years. You had all the information, and yet, like, it's still coming up, which can sometimes be harder because you're like, I know exactly what's coming up, but it's coming up. And yes, the awareness will really support, but just kind of playing with it and trying different things. It's like, okay, for me, it is physical. For me, somatic, shaking, moving, breathing is a big thing. And for you, one thing I'm hearing is the safe, like I am safe. Like, I am good. I'm safe in my body. I'm safe in this moment. There's no threat. This is all just occurring in the body and in the mind. And I'm telling this story. But allowing yourself, wherever you are, if you're anxious, avoidant, somewhere else on the spectrum, it is good to just trial things out to see, because we can have all the information, and yet when it occurs is so very different than what did they say in the podcast? Let me see if I can access it. It's like we had to try these things out and explore it. So I assume that's what you did. You tried it out. You heard things because you had all these conversations with experts, and then you would trial things. Is that something you would do yourself, like trial it in relationship and then step away, journal? Like, what was your kind of process to finding what actually worked for you?
Yeah, to reiterate what you said, like putting these things into practice. And that's why I love these frameworks that we, even if it's just saying, like not using always and never, and like just
huge.
Yeah. Like just doing that. And so you get like these little touch points, and then it's just practice. It's, I would say like we do attract a lot of times like the person that is going to be a mirror to us. It's why anxious and avoidant people generally get together, or you form that dynamic even in relationship. And so it's having awareness around it and recognizing the pattern and then putting it to practice. And it's fun when you start to get these communication tools, and then your partner doesn't even have to be in the same space. But I'm dating someone now, and these things she's very emotionally intelligent, and these things are new to her, like the framework. She's like, oh, there's a framework for that. She's like, and she's great she's like validating me. She's like, I love how you share in the way you do. And it's just like, I kind of forgot that at one point I didn't know these. Yeah. And then once you have them and you can use the framework and someone shares and then you can reflect back to them, it'll kind of rub off too.
And most men are not socially and emotionally intelligent. They're not. So it's very rare. And that's probably why somebody like the current person you're dating is like, whoa, you got capacity to communicate. You have awareness of your feelings. So rare for men. So even if you picked up like 2 or 3 things from this to play with as a man, or even if you're a woman listening to this, most people don't have it, especially men. It's very rare, very uncommon. So to even practice a few of these things is massive. And it creates so much deeper relating and so much more attraction as well from others. I'm curious though, because you just started relating to this person, and because it's a new relationship, I would think the agreements would start to come in of like, not waiting until later on, years later, okay, let's navigate the hard stuff, but up front to make sure it's a good fit. Mm-hmm. Did you like make sure certain things were spoken about? And did you bring up attachment styles like early on? I feel like you would have.
Not yet, but we had a conversation yesterday about kids.
Yeah.
And it was, it didn't feel hard to me, but like be very clear if you do or don't want kids with someone that you're dating, and maybe not the first date, but if you're a man or a woman who's like, I want kids, put in your online profile. That's a form of communication. Be very clear on understanding what you want, and communicating it. But yeah, it was just like, hey, we're getting to know each other and to like each other. And I was like, we haven't talked about this, but I want to know how you feel about having kids.
Yeah.
Those
early on agreements are necessary, because I think it's often that we get into relationship out of simply attraction or lust. They're like, oh, this is so good. It's so hot, so fun. And we didn't actually look at what our needs are. We didn't actually look at what our wants and desires are. We didn't actually go through any of these things to see what are the things that we are craving in relationship. It's just, do you want to be monogamous or open? Like, it's just very basic, but it's like, no, let's go into what our needs are. This even happened for us in friendship, because we talked about it early on. We were talking about what we want in friendship. And this kind of came up naturally because we're both interested in this. So this isn't just in partnership, but it's agreements on what we want to do together, how we want to, I say, journey through life together. It's like, no, I want close brothers. You talked about this. You're like, I want a few close men in my life, which is so cool to hear. I was like, oh, great. This isn't just going to be one of those friendships that see you around town, see you at a thing. It's like, no, you want to go deep with a few select people. It's like, oh, that's nice to hear, because I do that, but I'm friends with a lot of people and have a lot of community. So it's good to know. I'm like, oh, one of Chase's needs in friendship is to go really deep and to be really consistent and to see each other regularly. It's like, great. I can show up for those needs. I love that. Let's go. And that, you actually saying that early on, was really good to hear and good to know, because also if I couldn't show up for that, I'd be like, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just trying to have like a bunch of homies. I already feel like I have my close crew. I don't really have space for that. But because you communicated it, I could know, rather than just kind of flow. And then these expectations come in of like, oh, he should know that I want like close friends. Where's he at? If you never said it, how would I know? But you did communicate it. So it's really cool to look back on, even in friendship, to be able to acknowledge what are the agreements and what are my needs in this relationship.
Yeah. And the theme with all this is what we started with, is that the quality of your relationships is the quality of your life, and relationships are built on trust and respect in communication. Like that's how humans interact. And we're not taught these things. And I think we covered a beautiful framework. And one of the things maybe before we wrap up that we didn't mention, but that's worth mentioning is nonverbal communication, just because that, I mean, some sociologists I've seen, like over half of communication is nonverbal. So how are we looking at the person, eye contact, our tone, body language? Obviously, you're big into somatic stuff, so maybe you could talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, this is, I love social psychology for this because I've read a lot into this, and thin slicing is something that is often mentioned in social psych, and it's what we do naturally. Everyone's doing it. We're thin slicing all the time, which is what quick acknowledgement or judgment do I have about a person right away when I see them based on what they're wearing, how they're walking, how they're speaking. It's instant. It's like it happens in like 3 seconds. We thin slice. So if you know that that's happening, you are doing that to other people, and that's happening to me. So one side of it would be, if I want to convey loving attention and focus, how can I do that better? And for me, the thing is, I notice if I'm talking to somebody, I've trained being present a lot more, because I would often be like kind of thinking about other stuff, like looking around, like noticing, like I'm talking to them, but I'm kind of like, all right, what else is there going on? And it's like, no, let me fully be with this person. Let me direct my attention. Let me look at them. Let me not think about other stuff as much as possible, and show them with my body language that I care about them. And that's what I can do on my side. And especially if it's something that's in a professional landscape, if you're wanting to even be perceived with power or be perceived with acknowledgement or with love, like you're going to want to convey that with the body to have that level of conviction, because it's seen, it's felt. So if my arms are crossed and I'm like this, I'm like, oh yeah, no, I'm super open to what you're saying. And I hear you, but it's reactive. It's not real. So you can actually bring awareness, like, oh, I notice I'm doing that. Let me open up. Let me relax my shoulders. Okay. Even though I'm feeling kind of closed off, can I open to this person? So I can notice my side of the nonverbal cues that I'm giving off and bring presence to this person. And if I don't want to talk to this person, there's a way I can communicate that instead of slowly kind of turn my body away, which is not the way to communicate. But then also with the other person, you can notice how they're actually feeling. And as men, this is super important, because I notice men do this and it can make women feel very uncomfortable, which is forcing themselves onto women, verbally or otherwise. And a woman will, for instance, be closed off and be kind of like what I'm saying, kind of turning away, kind of like, slightly just, you can tell they feel uncomfortable, but the dude's not picking up on it. And it would be a really great thing to train and great awareness to have to pick up on that, to create safety for women or your friends or anybody. As you start to notice the closing off, or you start to notice the distraction of the fidgeting or whatever, either ask a question about it or see how you can create more safety in that conversation or conflict. Because if it's somebody you care about, you should care enough to notice the body language that they're giving off. So become very aware of that and notice it, because we're all doing it all the time, but it takes a certain level of training to be like, oh, okay, this person might be feeling uncomfortable, or they might be feeling super open. It's like, great, I can go into this conversation more because they love what I'm saying. But to at least be noticing those cues. And if you're comfortable enough with the person, you can actually call it out and be like, hey, just want to make sure you're feeling comfortable right now or able to talk about this, because I notice you're kind of closing off or you're turning away. So just want to check in. The story I'm telling myself is, you might feel a little uncomfortable right now. So just let me know. I want to make sure, you're feeling safe. That is so good to communicate, especially as a man. All people, it's great. But if dudes could do that more and have the capacity to actually thin slice in real time to see what is being conveyed on a nonverbal level and then conveying with yourself on a nonverbal level, it's potent, and it's going to help you be such a good communicator.
Yeah. I think we
Did I just do it perfect? Did I?
we did it. You just did it perfect.
Great.
Yeah, there's so much to communication that would just put little part of nonverbal at the end.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part. But as you said, like having awareness around all these things is kind of the first step. So hopefully today you guys will be able to practice these tools. And I remember just when I learned the nonviolent communication framework, it unlocked a lot in my life.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to share this.
That's it. That's that first level, is the awareness, which I hope everybody listening to this gained a bit more awareness, things to trial out. And we're going to have a tool. We're going to have a tool after this. So look at that mini clip in the next episode to go with this episode that you can follow along with. That's going to be rooted in nonviolent communication. So Chase and I are going to guide you in that, a practice that you can do yourself or do along with a person that you care about. So we want you to actually leave with resources from these episodes as well. So yeah, any questions on this topic? We will keep going on this. I'm sure at some point we'll have an expert on to talk about this as well. I mean, we're both like experts.
Yeah.
Not really. But we will continue this conversation and it'll keep coming up. So let us know if this resonated with you, any questions you have, engage with us. We appreciate you all, and we'll see you in the next episode.